So I tell you what, I've had a lot of issues with some of the newer tubs. The acrylic tubs seems to keep getting cheaper and cheaper over time. And it's really starting to make a lot of sense to refinish your tub. And it always has made sense with these old antique tubs. This is an old cast iron tub made by American Standard in the 1950s. And as you can see, it has this really awesome decorative bump out that you just can't purchase anymore. So we're gonna refinish it with an epoxy. So this epoxy, really simple to actually do, and it's gonna make it look brand new. So everything comes in the kit. You can buy a kit. It has all the components with it. It's epoxy, so it's a two-part process that you mix. It's got the cleaner with it. So that's really awesome because you want to definitely really scrub and get all the dirt, grime, silicone, anything that's on the tub. And we're going to demonstrate that here because there's a lot of stuff wrong with this tub that we need to address. We've got plastic so that you can protect. If this was in an existing bathroom, you can tape off all of your tile or in the floor. It comes with the roller to move the areas around, has a little putty knife to move things, and then some tape as well, and also a scrubby pad. So really awesome. It has the whole kit all in here, everything you need. The only additional items that I am gonna bring here is a heat gun. So you'll see me demonstrate this later on, but it basically gets out all the fine bubbles that are in the epoxy. Just make sure that you get everything out. It's also great to dry things as well because everything has to be 100% dry before you do this. And the big tool that is really gonna help me out is one of these abrasive wheels. So we're gonna be cleaning this tub. This has old, basically thin set and silicone and all types of crud on here. So this is gonna help sand that up. And I also just have a little bit of acetone just in case I can't get some of that silicone off. But the most important thing is getting everything 100% clean before you actually start the epoxy project. And the other big note, it has to be warm. You have to be above, I would say 75 degrees to make this stuff work properly. So make sure that you turn up that heat in your bathroom and make sure it's very, very warm. If the tub is cold, and in the room environment is cold, the epoxy is not going to do very well. It's going to take a long time, and it might not actually spread out the way that you want to. So it has to be heated. And other than that, let's just get started on the process of cleaning this up. And then I know we have a couple areas that we have to patch as well, and we're going to do that before we do the epoxy. Okay, so first thing we need to do is scrub everything and clean this entire tub up. They do have a specific cleaner that they like you to use. It's this Lysol, basically toilet bowl cleaner. So if you don't buy the kit, make sure you buy this as well because it's really important to get all the grime and dirt off of there. And then we're gonna be using an abrasive pad. So this is kind of goes on your grinder. This is really going to be helpful just because how much crap is on this old tub. Now you probably want to be a little bit careful with this if you're going over like a fiberglass unit. This is primarily going over cast iron here. So be careful with the abrasiveness that you have on things, but just know that we're going to be basically coating this with epoxy. So we're going to be able to repair any holes or nicks or anything that you do with it. So let's get started and clean this up. So it does look like this was painted at one point. So you can see here I'm getting that old paint off of there. Now it's not going to necessarily be bad to go over this paint. It's just anything chipping and basically peeling off is what you want to get off of here. So, but I'm going to actually just make sure that the tub rim is completely clean and taken off. But as long as that paint's on there very, very well, it's not going to be a problem. It's just that if it's peeling or if you have like a lot of spots like this, it might be best to grind it all off. But it'd be quite a chore to actually grind off all of the paint. That's really not necessary. Just as long as it's a good foundation or it's sound and it's on there really well, you'll be okay. All right, I'm gonna let that sit for about 5 minutes and scrub it down and wipe it down and make sure we get any loose paint. So remember that this is only going to coat over what you leave there. So if you leave silicone, you're basically coating over the silicone and you're relying on that silicone to actually be well adhered to the tub. And there's no definite answer whether that's going to last. So it's kind of like painting, like any type of paint job, it all relies on the surface below. I still have some of this acetone, I still have silicone kind of exposed here. So I'm going to see if they can kind of get the rest of that off. Some of the silicone can be definitely stubborn. Okay, so we'll let that dry. This is gonna have to be completely dry. And then obviously we have some nicks and cracks here, especially this guy here. So we're gonna fill that in because, you know, if you left this little divot here, it's just gonna show up. It'll be a nice clean white spot, but it's still gonna be a divot. You know, this stuff isn't gonna, it's basically like a paint. It's gonna go over whatever the surface looks like. So something like this, definitely recommend doing a repair. Any of these really deep scratches is a good idea. And yeah, so do the best you can, get as much off of as you can. Now you're gonna spend another 2 hours like really scrubbing this thing and getting all of that paint off of it. And you know, there's something to be said for that effort. I think ultimately, you know, it's probably worth the effort to try to really get all this paint off. But the epoxy is basically a casting. So as long as the paint's on good, you should be in good shape. So when in doubt, you could always use Bondo. This has been a trusted type of putty that we've used on all types of things. I'm very familiar with this product, so I know it's going to harden up in about 20 minutes and we can fill in all these dents. So Bondo is a really great product for all surfaces, especially since it's a two-part system that will harden very quickly. That's an unmistakable smell right there. Oh, it smells so good. It just, well, it smells like chemicals, but I've used so much of this stuff. Like when it reminds me of being 16 years old and having my first car, because I bought like a couple gallons of this stuff and just basically shellacked the entire side of my car that was all dented in. And so it just brings back good memories. Basically, about a, you know, they say it's a golf ball size of basically the part A, and then you just need a little bit of the hardener. And now we can go ahead and just fill in these holes. It's definitely the only way to fill this is with some Bondo here. A torpedo heater, because I'm in a basement and it's still kind of cold in here. 65 degrees for the most part, so I warmed this up to be about 80 degrees. You really want the tub to be fairly warm. You don't want it to be freezing cold because that's going to affect the finish. So get it to a sauna level in the room and you'll be in good shape. This stuff is really, takes some effort to sand. So just make sure that the tub is nice and clean, because any dust in here is going to cause a problem. So, okay. So, and I should mention, if you're in an existing bathroom, obviously this is kind of staged down here in the basement. But if you had a cold air return or a regular heat duct coming in, tape that off. You just don't want to have any windows open or any air movement within the bathroom. Any little bit of dust that's going to fall on this stuff is going to kind of ruin the finish. So you really have to make sure that everything's really clean and that there isn't any dust. Now, obviously the prep for a bathtub that is already set in place, there's going to be a lot of taping off of all of the tile and along the base. In this instance, we are going to put a little bit of tape here at the bottom just to prevent it getting all over the plywood. And if I need to scrape up some of it, it's not going to get all dirty with the plywood. But there's a lot more prep when it comes to doing a shower that's already in existing. One other thing I would really highly recommend, even if you do have an existing tub, is to take out the drain assembly and plan to either install a new one or just remount your actual tub flange. Main thing is, it's always a problematic area in a tub. You're going to have to tape that off if you're leaving the drain in, and there's always issues around that drain. So in my mind, I think it's best to remove the entire drain assembly, and then whatever leaks down, we're going to have a little catcher underneath of there to pick up any of the excess material so we can continue our spreading of the material. Okay, so then I have a little catcher here that I'm going to put underneath of the drain. So this is going to go underneath of the drain to pick up any of the excess that dribbles down through here, because you want to continue to be able to use it to spread it out, and obviously it's going to be dripping into the drain cavity here. So it comes in a two-part system. You can't mix this with a drill. You have to do this all by hand. So you want to put everything that you have in this bottle into the bucket, stir it for 10 minutes by hand. I know it's a long time, but you can't use a drill or you're going to bring too much air into the mixture and you're going to have a whole bunch of problems with bubbles. So when you're mixing it, try to be, don't try to bring air into the mixture. The important thing is just getting these components completely fused together. So that's why it takes so long to do. And then you have to let it sit for 5 minutes and then mix it again for 2 minutes. So you almost got 20 minutes of time involved with actually mixing the product. Part B, hardener into the mixture and just start mixing. So you can see how lumpy that is right now. I just started stirring it. So this is why it's going to take forever to get it into a nice creamy consistency. All right, so my arm's starting to get sore now. So it's a nice, really thick paint consistency now. 2 more minutes, and then we're ready to start finishing this tub. They used to have this in cans, and you used to be able to bend the can, but the plastic doesn't work as well because we're basically just trying to pour it. So one thing you want to keep in mind when you're doing this is not really painting. This is more like it's considered casting. So you're basically just trying to maneuver the product so it kind of just oozes itself over. It's kind of like a self-leveler to a certain extent. You're just pushing things to get it to where you need to. So unlike painting, where you're actually really working it into the surface, this is kind of just free-flowing over. So keep that in mind. This is not a race. You have plenty of time, working time with this stuff. So usually you almost have an hour to be able to still keep playing around with this stuff. So just take your time and try to get this as coated as well as possible. So I'm going to go ahead and pour this into my little container here. At this point, we're just going to pour this across the tub, right along this rim. And I'm going to keep it away from the front end of the tub for now because I don't want to get my body into it. So just try to work on the inside of the tub at this point. All right, so that's probably enough for now. Let that ooze down. And we're just going to use this little roller to kind of push it up against my flange. So you can see this kind of pouring into my little bucket there. I'm going to need all that excess, so it's important to be able to catch that. If you don't see anything moving anymore, you can just kind of basically try to push this up. And we can start pouring a little bit more here to get it all along this wall. You're not like painting it, you're just letting it kind of glide down the wall. And the thickness of it is what, you know, what's just allowing it to stick on the surface there. Okay, so it's one of those things you just kind of stop playing around with it at one point. And that's the heat gun's going to help get the air bubbles out, but we're going to let this front work. But you still have plenty of time to work with it, honestly. Smooth it out. Just try not to get stuff in your... So any little pinhole or anything you see, it should kind of smooth it out a little bit too. All right, so that takes care of that. Just pay attention to any of the air bubbles in the next hour or so. Just use that heat gun. You do want to use a heat gun. You don't necessarily want a blow dryer. Blow dryer would probably blow too much dust around. But that's going to be your biggest enemy, is having any dust in the air and falling in your tub. You know, it's really difficult to get out at this point. And after an hour, you kind of don't want to play around with this anymore. You're just going to make streaks and things that are going to be troublesome. But overall, this stuff is really awesome. It's going to have a nice, real good candy shell covering over all of this, and the epoxy is going to be really durable and should last, you know, another few decades for sure. So wow, it's been 36 hours since I applied that epoxy, and it's amazing. It feels like a brand new porcelain coating. Definitely does a great job, but you definitely need to wait the time, especially if you're in like a little bit of a colder environment. You need to let this epoxy completely set up. Even the day after, I went and touched it, and it was not sticky, but it was enough to make an imprint of my hand on the epoxy. So you need to let this completely cure before using it or moving this thing around. But this is definitely a great option. Highly recommend refinishing old antique tubs like this.